Sasha, you and I have differing opinions sometimes, but generally I tend to respect your gut feeling. I'm a little concerned about the delay in getting the American economy back. We have wrecked a $20 trillion economy for what appears to be a massive medical simulation. The deaths are not there. Most people are self healing. Why don't you just give me in just a few minutes your current appraisal of where we are with the coronavirus?
First, I want to just stop at coronavirus. A virus is an excretion from living cells that happens as a detoxification phenomenon. As you know, with the Spanish flu in 1918, there were millions and millions of deaths all around the world because of that flu. It was an influenza, but it corresponded a matter of months after radio telegraphy had been introduced to the world. So there was this huge onslaught with mutant frequencies attacking living systems. There was a natural ecological response to that, which came as a detox. We had viruses excreted from cells. We call that a pandemic, and our scientists shuffle off and get their commissions and grants. A number of years later, in the Second World War, we had radar introduced, and a whole bunch of new mutant and hostile frequencies unleashed against all living systems in the world. On cue, we had millions and millions of people dying of this aberrant influenza that emerged out of nowhere, another pandemic. And now we're seeing something which, as you know, the 5G apocalypse film Extinction Event that we released a year ago was forewarning about, and that has arrived on our doorstep. By best accounts, the pandemic is connected directly to the excretion, a detox event happening globally. Has that natural excretion detox event been commandeered or co-opted by a weaponized a virus element? More than likely. And I think that that's where it becomes very, very complex.
Let me add to your brilliant overview the whole issue of immunity. Because the Spanish flu, which I totally agree, and there's that wonderful book, The Invisible Rainbow, and I have a 17-page summary at phi-beta-iota.net. But the other thing that happened with the Spanish flu is that the whole world shifted to canned goods, and nutrients that were in normal food started being extracted, and the whole immunity system of the world population started going down. And I think that's a related issue. Now, 5G, I give a tip of the hat to American intelligence media for their story on the Jewish Harvard professor who was working on nanoparticles, because that story made the connection between a wildly contagious virus that was not lethal, nanoparticles that could then be activated to achieve new levels of lethality later, and 5G as the triggering mechanism for the nanoparticles. And I personally am now predicting that in August, 1 week after the US government shuts down for the month of August, there will be a real pandemic in the United States with biological drops in all of the major cities, including Chicago. How do you react to that constellation?
I'd first just want to make a slight correction. I think Dr. Klinghardt is probably the world's leading expert, certainly that I would defer to on this matter. We've got a special cocktail, which is a lethal cocktail operating within every single human body today. And you're right, 5G is the catalyzing event that activates that bomb. But the components of that bomb are fluoride in the body of every human being subsequent to the Second World War, and the fluoridization of all municipal water supplies, which was an insanity at the time and remains an insanity today. And of course, the fact that fluoride was then pumped into toothpaste and other products wherever by stealth. This is something which is well tracked, well understood. So the fluoridization of the pineal gland in all human beings is one aspect of it. The glyphosates that have been introduced into the food supply for the last few generations is another one of those lethal compounds. Okay, and then you've got aluminum raining down on people through geoengineering. When aluminum and glyphosate lock in the human body, 6 chemical compound responses occur, and they make their way toward the pineal gland, and they lock and load. The 5G signal is the catalyst for this frequency set, is the catalyst for the bomb. So you're talking about a bomb effectively that is going to affect the capacity for all human beings to connect to their life force and to their spiritual hyperdimensional field of reality. Anyone laughing at that ought to be taken out the back and put down right now, because we're in a spiritual war. This is end of days stuff. It is Armageddon, it's apocalypse. But the point is, we've all been weaponized biologically by now.
All right, I agree with that. Now, you've also given me grounds for confidence that this can be handled. That 5G can be neutralized, that the spiritual renewal of the world, which I believe has been going on since 2012, can in fact triumph. Why don't you give us in just 1 minute the happy news?
Happy to do it in 1 minute. I'll give you HIV/AIDS, introduced by stealth as a bioweapon and targeting the African genome 30-odd years ago. It failed. It was designed to nail the blackest of the black genome, which is why people in my country, black people in my country, could get it almost through skin impedance by touching a rail. It was so contagious to the blackest genome of all. If you took this and extrapolated HIV/AIDS to people in Scandinavia, white-skinned Aryans, you could practically inject HIV in them and they wouldn't get it. So that we now know was what happened. What actually threw HIV/AIDS off our back? It was the human gene expression adapting through morphogenesis and counteracting it, and eventually assimilating it and throwing it off its back. The same thing happens time and time again. Whenever the human biological technology is under endemic attack, the human gene changes. And that ultimately is what is going to happen here as well. So we've got this mass excretion event, this mass pandemic. It's going to die down. It's a fractal phenomenon. It's going to die down. Is it going to be weaponized again in a more egregious way, as you suggest? Personally, I don't think so, but I certainly understand your argument.
Okay, I got that about adapting, but there's two parts of this as a former spy that caused me trouble. The first is that the whole 5G infrastructure is popping up these nasty little radiation things inside of poles now, everywhere. And I react negatively to the whole idea of electromagnetic pollution. So on the one hand, I don't think we should have the physical infrastructure, even if it's benign, but that really causes me trouble. The other part of the problem I have is that there are people without scruples who want to depopulate the earth. And they are willing to do biological bombs in major cities, particularly in the United States of America, if it advances their agenda. So how do we help the president stop people who are planning to biologically bomb major U.S. cities in August, in part to make sure that President Trump is not reelected? In fact, they might be making him a dictator, which is also not a good solution.
I'm not qualified to answer that question. In point of fact, you're my go-to guy on that question. But if I considered that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are, without any question of doubt in my mind, the primary figures in this quote-unquote Earth Alliance, and it is my contention, and I will stand by it, that the so-called white hat element is absolutely in the basement and has clawed back the critical power hub of centralized power. I think what we're seeing right now play out in the United Kingdom with this bizarre imperial corporate fascism rolling out, everyone taking their orders from somewhere, who knows where the orders are coming from. But we're seeing tyranny in Australia. People just been told today if they're caught in the street out of curfew, it's now 10 years in prison, as opposed to 6 months in prison.
We arrested a pastor in Florida for holding church services.
Right. Well, you see, all of this stuff we're seeing is the dying embers of the Atlantean dream, the bad dream that we permissioned and we dreamt up generationally, civilizationally. So we are seeing the end of a civilizational cycle which has been predicated on blood economy and blood sacrifice for thousands of years, from pre-Sumerian times. That stuff doesn't just disappear. We have to go through a catharsis. The catharsis is a metadimensional phenomenon. Whether we like this language or not, that's what's happening, baby. We are now, billions of us, projecting at the quantum level images into the field that are manifesting and coming back as the bogeyman. We're seeing our own subliminal creation, and that is rightful and needful if we are to transmute and transcend into any kind of higher state as a successful species. That's what we're living through.
Sasha, I really sense that our president is doing the best he can, but he is not being given all of the information, and the White House has completely failed to call in the 30 or 40 doctors that I've identified, all of whom are saying that we're doing a number of things wrong. I think we're doing some things right, particularly in relation to getting ready for the next big one. But let me ask you, if you were President Trump's spiritual advisor, you're much more attractive than Paula White. If you were President Trump's spiritual and scientific advisor, the two now need to merge. What are we doing wrong? And what are your thoughts on how to rapidly get the American economy back on track sooner than later?
Okay, economy is an extension of social ecology. Social ecology is an extension of community and community values. Community values is an extension of relationships that exist amongst men and women and children. So we've got to go back to that. And then the relationships between men and women is an extension of the relationship we have with ourselves. And that's connected again to our spiritual integrity. So if you are telling people to cloister themselves indoors and stay out of sunshine and stop hugging their grandchildren and step 3 meters away from each other, you've just fucked up in an unholy way. What you've done is assured autoimmune deficiency. Incidentally, that's called AIDS. Self-isolation is a perversity, and we need to recognize it as thus. Social distancing is a grotesquerie, and we need to recognize it as thus. Now, we will do eventually. Some people are that stupid, it could take them 3 years to recognize the falsity, the Luciferianism, the false light idolatry of government and instructions and orders and edicts and statutes and ordinances. That is Luciferianism. That is false light worship. And unfortunately, most people in the enlightened world are idolaters in the 21st century.
That's utterly brilliant. But I want to go back to something you said earlier in another conversation about the importance of sunlight and the importance of fresh air. What you're really telling me is that the things we're doing wrong is, number one, we're violating the human spirit, the family spirit, the community spirit. And number two, we're violating the connection between people and sunlight and the earth. Basically, how we're handling this is almost like a bureaucracy that is slicing and dicing everything up, and it's killing the patient.
It's perfect geometry. It's entirely appropriate. Again, we need to this is cathartic. We need to meet with the bogeyman that we have incubated and stewarded over generations. And this is what is now emerging in the field. We can only move to that greater golden dawn, that great becoming, that next evolutionary upgrade, once we have engaged, self-elected to engage that catharsis. I believe this is a collective cathartic exercise. We haven't quite woken up to that in the mainstream, but I believe in a very short period of time we will. I think we'll feel entirely embarrassed by this episode in our evolution, but it's acceptable because it's moving from an unconscious civilization to a conscious one.
So on the one hand, we need to reconnect to ourselves, our families, our community, and Mother Earth. And on the other hand, we need to understand that we are one. I love the whole Trump thing, where we go one, we go all. And I think Q is utterly brilliant. And so somewhere in here, what you're really saying is we need to connect spiritually. We also need to connect collectively. And in that collective catharsis lies salvation.
Nicely put.
Now, to come to a close on this lovely interview, you and I both know Anthony Judge. And I am posting tomorrow an article by him on how the coronavirus has, in fact, forced the issue of new thinking. So let's agree to end on this final question. Assuming the coronavirus, whether it was manipulated, a fake pandemic, whatever, it clearly is being used by the president in positive ways. So what is your overall estimate of how the coronavirus might, in fact, be the last exit for the deep state and the beginning of new thinking for the new earth?
Well, to me, it all comes down to what you truly know in your state of witness, of pure witness. Each of us, before we are radical lefties or Republicans or black or white or Christian or Muslim, before all of that, we are each of us sentient beings. We are spirit, we are soul. We have migrated to this time-space continuum, each one of us. And there's a reason for that. Now, what is it that we truly know in our state of witness as the sons and daughters of God? I know what I know. It's in my gut. It's my psionic intelligence. It's that deep knowing. And we need now to retreat to that cave. That's what this projection of a return to the cave is all about, the blackout and the curfew. It's symptomatic of a deeper calling for us to return to the cradle of our spirit. And in that space of stillness, in that space of darkness, we can be reborn truly in our true nature. But it is important, more than anything else, that in that sanctified space that each of us are being forced into, by ourselves, mind you, nothing's being done to us. This is the collective dream. Therefore, dream wisely.
That's it. I can't improve on that. God bless you, Sasha. I very much look forward to the next time we meet face to face. You are, in my view, an extraordinary pioneer. Thank you for talking to me.
God bless you, Robert. Bye-bye.